What's good, y'all? It's Brandon with Bama Fitness, and today we are delighted to have my brother from another mother and father, Joey Castro. Joey
Oh,
Castro,
yeah,
how
how
are
you
you
doing,
doing,
man?
brother?
Feeling good, feeling good. How about yourself? Everything good?
Doing pretty good. COVID sucks, but got to make the best of it and everything, and yeah, move forward. Going right into it, can you introduce yourself to everyone so the people that out there that do not know you, they can get to know you?
Okay, so I'm Joey Castro. I'm from Patterson, New Jersey, but I live in Paccong, New Jersey right now. I was raised in Patterson. I've been studying martial arts now, so 31 years. I had to think about that for a second. In Patterson with my uncle, who's my adopted father. He's my biological uncle, but he's my adopted father, Juan Perez Sensei. He's my mother's brother. Yeah, so that's basically who I am. I compete on a circuit. I coach some kids, and I own a dojo myself. So super busy, but basically my life revolves around karate. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So like, if people like, so it's just what everyone knows out there. I knew Joey ever since, I don't
I
even remember, like since we were like
yes,
young.
we used to compete on AAU together when well, you were a couple years younger than me, but
Yeah,
when we were very young, so we were like, I don't know, maybe like 10 to 14. There's a lot of competitions back then. Yeah.
that's good times, man. That was good times. And I
Yes.
didn't know till this day because when we were, just so everybody knows, when we were younger, they was always coming up to Albany, like helping us, train and everything. Awesome. Then there was a time where I didn't speak to you at all for like
Yeah,
years.
years.
Then when was it? Probably like 21, 22. Then we connect again with like Ali and
Oh
everybody.
yeah, Viali. Yes.
Yeah. So it's crazy how the gap. Then we always come back together as family and everything. Family never splits. So how did you get into like karate? What was like? Do you remember the first day that you got into it?
I don't remember my first day. I remember always just kind of growing up in a dojo.
Hmm.
I ironically, a lot of people don't notice. I didn't like karate when I was younger.
Hmm.
Karate in our family is a non-negotiable. With my kids now, I have three sons and one daughter. It's a non-negotiable. You just in our family, you did karate. So my uncle, I would stay with him and be with him a lot throughout the week. And since I grew up in a pretty bad neighborhood, he made it mandatory for me to go to karate. So he would pick me up and drive me to karate and drop me off. And ever since I was young, it was non-negotiable for me. I just had to do karate, and I would fight him on it all the time, especially like I guess like around like when I was younger, it wasn't so bad. Like around 11, 12, that's when I really didn't like it because I wasn't very good. In my opinion, I didn't feel I was very good. I was very uncoordinated, spill stuff and trip. I would do like Ochioke and I would do middle blocks and get stuck. I was like terrible. And then when I hit puberty, it kind of like started coming together.
Hmm.
And I guess when I was like intermediate, I got a little bit better. And it really didn't all click until I got black belt. But my uncle would pick me up and drag me to the dojo. I'd be crying and no, you're coming to karate. So yeah, so he forced me to do karate for years, years and years and years, and never let me quit. And to this day, I'll tell you at least once a week when I call, I always just thank him like, thank you for not letting me quit. Thank you for pushing me and making me have that structure because I feel martial arts in general just gave me structure as a man and gave me insight and gave me confidence and made me feel very different and opened up so many doors and opportunities that wouldn't have been there um, if I hadn't studied martial arts and pursued that path, and I wouldn't be able to provide for my family or influence people or do what I was or do what I do if it wasn't for karate. So it all came from just my uncle demanding that I stick with what we started and develop and cultivate some skills. So yeah, that was it. He just made me do karate, and
Hmm.
after a while it clicked, and um, I thank him all the time for that, man. I thank him for pushing me and seeing something in me and holding me to that standard. So, ironically, he let his daughters quit though, but I wasn't allowed
You couldn't say
because I was
nothing.
the boy. So
That's
the
different.
boys weren't allowed. The girls they would take hiatuses or they would go like play some sports or do something else. And they had to do something though. It wasn't in our household, it wasn't like you could not do anything. You could just stay home and no, like my cousin wound up being a very famous artist, and
Mm-hmm.
my other cousin has her own little business, and we all turned out okay, but it was thanks to this man's structure and putting the right things inside of our heads and making sure we stayed focused.
That's
So
good.
yeah.
Yeah, Sensei is a really awesome guy.
Oh yeah, he loves you, man.
Yeah,
So
I love the
yeah.
guy to death, man. I wanna actually we're gonna get him on here too.
Oh
So
yeah, it'd be great. He's a one of a kind spirit.
I know he
Definitely a good
pushes.
soul.
I know he pushes you. I know he pushes everybody and whatnot. Um, I know, and that's where you got it from him to push your kids to get into it as well, huh?
Oh, push
Not
everyone.
quit.
Yeah, yeah, we have to. So I don't feel kids quit karate. I feel parents quit karate.
Yeah, right.
It's
I
not a
totally
your
agree
kid.
with that.
If your kid woke up the next day and he said, "Mom, I don't want to go to school today," Dad, I don't want to go to school. I'm done. I'm gonna quit school. You'd say, "No, you finished school."
Yeah,
And it should be the same with karate.
I
That's what
totally
I
agree.
believe wholeheartedly. So kids don't quit, parents do. I've never met no one. Think about this. I may ask you this question. In all the years I've studied karate, I'm still waiting for it to happen one day. I always ask because I want to see. I think one day it'll happen, and I want to hear the reason why. But I've never met someone who used to study karate and quit karate. And I always ask them, I'm like, "You happy you quit? If you could do it all over again, would you have quit?" And they always say no. No,
Mhm.
I wish I would have never quit. I wish I would have stood with it. Or they, you could see the sparkle in their eyes as they like, relive, training and going to tournaments and being in the dojo, and they all quit for various reasons, or some excuses, but I've never met anyone who said, "Yes, I'm happy I quit. Thank God I quit karate." It's never happened.
Yeah, never. I never heard that before.
So
Yeah,
you've never heard it either, right? So
I've never.
there you go. There you go, man.
So, like, when did you open up your own dojo? Because you said you did have
So
your own dojo.
Sensei, Juan Sensei always had a dojo when he was married. And then he closed his dojo at some point. He had divorced and didn't own his dojo. So he taught for another lady named Ruthie Junin in Passaic, New Jersey. He would teach her adults, and some other people would teach the kids. And then Ruthie Sensei wanted to sell him the dojo, and he said no. He didn't want to own a dojo. So Sensei just very stuck in his ways. He likes to teach his adults, teaches high-ranking students, teach kids that kind of, but he's not really, doesn't really want to deal with the business aspect and training little kids, which is where a big portion of your market is in a karate school. And, it's not for him, and he runs a very traditional dojo. So that compromise, isn't really something he's very into. So he wouldn't buy her the dojo. So he wouldn't he didn't want the dojo from her. So one day, uh, you know, she offered it several times to him. He offered it, and he came to me and he said, "Well, why don't you take the dojo?" So, I spoke to Sensei Ruthie, and we took over the dojo. And the deal was, sure, we can do that, but the we part. So I said, "We can do it," meaning I'll do it if you do it with me.
Hmm.
So I went and formed my LLC, and that's how I guess I opened my dojo. And I was very blessed because Sensei Ruthie had a small amount of students, which would kind of keep the overhead there, and she owned the building, so she gave me an amazing price. And then Sensei's always had a huge following of adults. To this day, we have a huge adult class, as you know, with people who've just been with us throughout the years. So I had a very good student base to start. And I teach all the kids along with my assistant instructor, Manny, and once in a while Amber helps out. So um, I teach the kids, and Sensei teaches, the advanced kids, and does everything when I'm traveling and doing other things. So
Hmm.
that's how we started our dojo. So that was wow, it was 6 years ago this September. So it's our 6th year in business. So they say if you make it past 5 years, you're doing good.
Congratulations on
But
that.
Sensei's taught karate his whole life. So um, the crazy thing about that is when I wanted to open my dojo, everybody told me I was insane. Um, so if you're listening to this and your heart resonates with karate, don't listen to people. Do with what the creator whispers to you, or whatever resonates within your soul. So I would work when I was in my 20s, early 20s. I worked I used to work at Chili's. I was a bartender,
Hmm.
and then I transitioned to working at AT&T, and I was a sales rep there, and I made real good money. In my early 30s, late 20s. And then one day, I would just go to AT&T, and it would kill my spirit. for lack of a better word. I mean, it's not against the company. I thought the company was good, and the management did their job. It was nothing personal against anyone there, but I remember just leaving there and not feeling motivated to go train and falling into a slump,
Mhm.
feeling depressed. And I would go on. This is when Facebook was just like really getting big. I would go on Facebook and see people I knew um, doing other things in karate, such as traveling and doing things, and say, man, I got to work this job and I can't get the time off to compete. And I wanted to compete because I was in my late 20s and I felt like that was a big peak for me.
Yeah.
I always felt, a lot of people don't notice either. I never felt as if I peaked in karate. Even now, I feel like I'm better now. I feel like right now I'm the best I've ever been. And I say that humbly. Like I feel like I know more than I've ever known. Maybe physically, I have more injuries, and um, I've always been in like this shape, like semi thin. I'm not Brandon, but
Yeah, right.
physically, I feel like I feel like I've improved a lot, especially this year with COVID. But I really wanted to tackle competition and see what was out there.
Mhm.
And that was a major part of why I wanted to open the dojo too. I figured if I opened the dojo, I'd have the freedom to do what I wanted with my schedule. And this is not against anyone who does. I just hated the idea of having a boss. It was something about another grown man telling me what to do that didn't sit right with me. Especially if it was someone who I didn't respect, or someone who I thought, some bosses I thought were hypocritical, or some bosses would have me do my job and I felt like I could do my job better
Mhm.
than they could do my job. So just that didn't resonate right with me. So when I was given the opportunity, I had some money saved, and you know the cards aligned. So we opened a dojo. We took over the dojo, and man, that first year was real rough. The obstacles we hit were tremendous.
Mhm.
A lot of obstacles, and the struggle at first, but it all paid off because that one leap of faith led into many other opportunities that wound up making me the person I am today. So you would think like, throughout your 20s is when you really establish yourself as a competitor and build your foundation. But for me, it's been through my 30s. And I'm thankful that it was because, you know, you have to do things not on your time, but on the creator's time. So, that's when, the creator saw it fit to put these obstacles and opportunities in my path and people in my path. And,
Mhm.
and that's when things happen. But, every once in a while, I look back on the whole thing and it's a strange, long journey, man. It's just crazy if you think about it. So like if it's a big journey. And the problem with the journey is everyone looks at the journey as you have to arrive somewhere, but you got to enjoy the journey, man. Enjoy the journey
Mhm.
of the triumphs and the failures and all that, because it just makes for a beautiful story.
Totally agree. That happened to me when I opened my dojo. I always wanted to open up a dojo. It happened. I went through a lot of obstacles and whatnot, but at the end of the day, you're just so grateful and appreciative that that actually happened, and the creator, you know, gave you the opportunity to do it. So totally understand that. Now, would you say that's like your biggest accomplishment in life, like opening up your own school?
No.
Or
So I think my biggest accomplishment karate wise um, isn't via business or isn't even via competitor. So I've been blessed to accomplish a lot martial arts wise, as far as my martial arts career would go. When I was younger, I did a lot of traditional stuff. Did a lot of AAU. I grew up an AAU boy like Brandon. I did some NKF stuff too and had some success. And due to where I was when I was younger, being a young father and having to provide for my family, I wasn't able to really. Well, I was able to. I just didn't manage. I was young and inexperienced, so I didn't manage my time correctly and didn't get to really compete through my early 20s. But I got to experience what I felt was as much as you could do on the trad circuit back then. Now you had guys have Series A's and Premier Leagues and the Olympics, hopefully, and all this stuff. Back then, it wasn't really like that. You did nationals, you
yeah,
did Junior Olympics, you did Worlds, and then you did it again. And then once you did all that, you're like, what's next?
yeah,
I keep doing this for like the next 20 years. So for me, a big thing I wanted to tackle was just the open competition, and the reason being was just because of the money. If I have to be
yeah.
honest, it pays very well. Grand championship was $1,000. You have to realize $1,000 back in like 2003,
It
2004
was
was
a lot of
a lot
money.
more than $1,000 now.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I started doing the open stuff. I would do some NBL, some NASCAR here and there. Not a lot of NASCAR. At first, it was a lot of NBL, and I had a lot of success on that back then doing that, and stopped doing it again, and I would just like do this on and off competition thing. And then I did some NASCAR and I had some success, not to the extent I wanted. There
Mhm.
was a lot of adversity, especially, of how politics could go, and you have to be very consistent in any competition, not just on NASCAR. Consistency. If you
Yeah.
want to be a competitor on whatever circuit you're on, if you're not consistent, you're just really putting yourself behind. So I don't feel as if I did it consistently. Once I did it consistently, a lot of stuff started to change, and I had a different swagger about it. And I linked up with I forget, it was a guy. I did like a local. I would do locals every once in a while, just because my uncle would want to go to a tournament, so I would go, and they weren't very hard because they were locals.
Yeah.
Some locals are hard up here though. But yeah, so met a guy named Arrest Goodson. A very good friend of mine's. A bit older than me. Known him when I was younger, and he said, "Let's just go to this tournament." I said, "When?" He said, "Tomorrow." And he drove me to Philadelphia to America.
Uh,
And I went there and lost, and I was upset I lost. I was upset I lost, for reasons. It
mhm.
wasn't because I lost. I actually lost I think I lost to Mike Spazuko and Andrew Cavalon, and Jarrett won the regular division. Yeah, it was something like that. I remember his name in particular, but I remember after doing that saying like, you know what, I want to compete again. Like
Mhm.
I remember because he said something to me, and Johnny would say this to me when I lost. I said, now what? We go home. He said, no, you got to stay for the night show. I said, I don't want to stay for the night show. He goes, but you lost. So he was sponsoring me. He was paying for this stuff. I didn't have to pay for it. He goes,
Mhm.
you lose, we stay and we watch who won. We eat that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I stayed and watched it. And I'm like, I watched the whole show and I'm like, all right. He knew what he was doing, man. He lit that fire. So that fire was lit. And then from there I just got back into competing, man. I was a competitor. So and then I stopped competing for a bit more. I just went off, Russ was running his business. He has a school in Hillside, New Jersey, very talented martial artist, good mentor, good guy, just good guy in general. He's an acquired taste, but he's a good guy. Um, and I linked up with Rick Diaz and Sue Diaz. So Hanchi Rick Diaz, I know because I used to compete in this tournament when I was younger. They had a tournament. They have a tournament called KTOC, which is my main sponsor.
Mhm.
KTOC is K Talk. Most people
Yep.
call it K Talk, and Hanchi's a lot like Juan Sensei. He's old in his ways, and Sue, his wife, Sue's like my mom. She
Awesome people.
takes very good care of me. I've been offered several opportunities to be on various teams and stuff, and my response is always Sue takes very good care of me.
Mhm.
I've had people say, "Well, what does she do?" Because I'm a man, I say, "Listen, even if you do, she takes very good care of me. Like that's it. She takes care of me. You got to take care of people who take care of you." So yeah, they just Sue believed in me. She saw something in me and she got me everywhere. She put my face everywhere. Hanchi put my face everywhere. They got me everywhere, got me competing everywhere. And times when I was like, oh, I just didn't want to do it. They were like, nope, we're locked in. And they were like, in a weird way, my karate parents.
Mhm.
They would bring me to tournaments, pick me up, drop me off, and opened up a lot of doors. And they've been riding for me when no one else was. So that opened up a lot of opportunities. And a couple years ago, it feels like it's a long time ago now, but the wind started coming. So then I started teaching a lot more,
Mhm.
and that helped. And that's when I feel everything really shifted for me karate wise. So I just went off on a rant. Your question was, what is my biggest accomplishment martial arts wise? My
No,
biggest accomplishment martial art wise was not my career and not that whole. It's sticking through that whole process.
okay.
People do it for a year or two,
Mhm.
and it doesn't work out and they're done. Which is why I went off on that rant. People do it when the opportunities are right or when the sun is shining, and that's not when it's done. Been
Yeah.
competing since as long as I could remember, but on the open circuit, man, it's been years now.
Yeah.
Years of winning, losing when I should have won, winning when I should have lost, and
Yeah.
just always picking myself up and getting back out there. I've competed against some of the best. I've beaten some of the best. I've lost to some of the best.
Yeah.
I've been on ESPN. I've got to meet a lot of people. I've got to influence a lot of people. I've got to do all this stuff, and got to see life outside of Paterson, New Jersey. Got to
Mhm.
travel the world. been all over the world. I can't think of a lot of it I did not have to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh,
teach all over the world, and that's all because I just, no matter what, I stood a competitor. So, it's bittersweet, man. It's bittersweet. I'm 35 now, and people ask, well, how many more years are you going to compete for? But I feel like now I'm in a weird transition point where I'm more focused on coaching and teaching and cultivating talent and
mm-hmm.
building a brand
Same.
and legacy. And now my one son Jojo, my middle son, he'll be 13, so he's a big competitor. So now I get to have a different hat, wear a different hat, and do it that way. So the ongoing joke is, when are you gonna stop competing? And I tell everyone, in 5 years.
I was gonna
And
say
say
that. Ask.
they say, why? Because you're 40? I say, no, because Jojo will be 18. And then
Uh,
someone said, well, no, because then he can take over. I said, no, he'll be 18 and
mm-hmm.
I'll beat him.
Uh-huh.
And then I'll walk away. For the rest of his life, he'll have to know that his dad won and I hold the W. So that's it. That's the ongoing joke. Might be truthful. We'll say it's a joke, but
Yeah, right.
the biggest accomplishment is sticking through it, man. I think a lot of people just quit. So many. I've had students. They're right there and they
Mm-hmm.
quit.
Really?
They quit, man. It's the worst. It's the worst, man. I've seen some of my most, and I've had kids, I don't want to say their names, so talented, and just parents weren't bought in, or they weren't bought in, or they just lacked the confidence, or life came along and punched them in their face and they stood down. Like, telling you, you got to be built differently to get up and do it again, man.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Now for competition, do you do kobudo, kata, sparring? Do you focus on one thing? Like,
So
what do
right
you?
now I focus on kata, primarily kata. I do a bit of well, growing up we had no choice. You did all three: weapons, sparring, and kata. For competition, I focus on kata. The reason I focus on kata in particular is because I believe, and I believe you can do more than one thing at a high level. I think to put that limitation on yourself is ridiculous. I've
Yeah.
seen people do it at a high level, but I believe it requires a lot of investment and sacrifice, and it requires for you to know the difference between investing and sacrificing.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is, like, if you wanted to do sparring and kata at a high level, you have to be able to commit to training 6 to 8 hours a day. So if you're training 6 to 8 hours a day, when do you have time for your family? When do you have time to work? Because you have to support yourself.
Exactly.
What kind of background or backing do you have financially? When do you have time for friends? So you have to sacrifice a lot of things that would be normal for people. And then you have to be willing to invest too. If you have X amount of money, are you willing to put all that money into your training, into your diet? You know, and the difference between investing and sacrificing is, sometimes when you sacrifice, there's no guaranteed return on what you're getting. Not even, you don't expect a return. Just, I gave this up, and that is what it is.
Yep.
Hopefully it works out for the best. When you invest, you always hope you're getting something back. You want a return on your investment. You wouldn't invest if not. So you have to know the difference. So um, that's a major aspect into what you want to do. So for me, I couldn't. Well, I could, but it wouldn't be worth the sacrifice. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like to say when I can't do things. I like to really think about the question. It wouldn't be worth the sacrifice of seeing my kids grow up, or being able to spend time with my partner, or you know, uh, building my karate school and leaving a legacy, in order to pursue doing more than one things at a high level. And maybe you can, like, do it decently at a high level, but then you're cutting yourself short. You're always going to have in the back of your mind, what if I would have really committed to sparring? I could have been like the GOAT. You don't want to feel that way. So for me, to just do kata at a high level was fine for me. And I knew there was a point in my career when I was very young where I had to decide if I wanted to do kata or fighting. Because be able to tell you, I was actually a very good fighter. I felt that
Yeah,
was
I
really
remember. I remember.
good. Weapons was never something that I don't do what I'm saying right now. I never practiced weapons. I would win in weapons. I would win nationals in weapons. I never practiced weapons. But I practice kata. So I think if you practice kata well and you understand fighting in your karate, your weapons will be good. But you
Uh-huh.
still practice your weapons if you like weapons.
Yeah.
If your sensei tells you to practice weapons, practice weapons.
Practice.
So, yeah, I had to decide. So I chose kata because I knew there was more longevity in kata. And I just, in all honesty, I would lose in kata more. So the fact that I lost in kata more,
Mm-hmm.
I felt more competitive in that genre. Because kata is a matter of opinion at the end of the day. People argue with you on that, but it doesn't matter what you say. It's a matter of opinion. Maybe that's just my opinion.
Okay.
Who knows? But yeah. So I chose to do kata, and it worked out for the better. But I still do weapons in the dojo. I still fight in the dojo. I still do fighting drills.
Yeah.
It's funny because once in a while my kid will fight. My kid's a real good fighter, and people say, "Who trains him?" My kid. What do you mean who trains him? Like, I train him, But such a disrespectful comment, right? If you think about it, but
You can't do that.
we have some very good fighters out of the dojo. But primarily, my dojo was a fighting school. It wasn't a kata
Yeah,
school.
I remember.
It just
I
became a
remember
kata school, I guess. But we were always really a fighting school.
fighting. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just chose to do kata and specialize in kata. And kata's kata's bittersweet, man.
I love
Kata's
it.
weird because the more you understand, the less you know.
Hmm.
And kata's one of those things where you look back on yourself. If you're good, 3 months.
Hmm.
If you're really applying yourself, but 3 6 months from now, you're like, man, that was terrible. A year from now, you're like, what was I doing?
Yeah, right.
A
Man.
couple years back, you're like, that's terrible. Don't look at anything with me back in like 2012. It was all just trash. It was so bad. But kata's always getting better too. It's always evolving. Uh,
Always.
Someone who you may think is amazing. You know, um, if you look at them when they were 16, our 16-year-olds now are dwarfing them, and that's because we're always it's to the senseis. We're always passing on knowledge, and the internet definitely changed everything with YouTube, and now these Zoom lessons changing everything even more. Knowledge is just so much more accessible, and it's from the same token, it's so much easier to learn wrong now too. You got to really get in there and figure out what you're doing. So, yeah, I just love kata, man. I'm a kata fanatic. So,
Kata it is. Now,
yeah.
like, tell me who inspires you.
A couple of so one, obviously my uncle, because his life was very chaotic, and he was a delinquent. So, and he did a 360 and broke the cycle not only with his kids but with me, and influenced so many kids throughout Patterson and Passaic, and has changed so many lives. He's raised so many kids. He's a father to so many. And is just like my mentor. He's my psychologist. He's my best friend. He's my advisor. He's my sensei. He's the goat, man. To me, he's the goat.
Yeah.
This man is so disciplined. He just gets in there and he'll train and hit the bag. And he's not training for competition. He trains because it's just what he does. He's an inspiration to me. I look at the guy and he's just an amazing man. He's just amazing. And anyone who's ever been in the dojo and watched Sensei work out on his own, you're like, geez, he just doesn't
Every,
stop.
every time I go to the dojo, I'll see him come in with his a trash bag, the suit, just hoodie, and just
Bag and
get in the
go.
bag.
Sensei's a fighter. Sensei also a very good writer. He writes so much article. This guy's a karate encyclopedia. Brandon will tell you, man, he's always writing stuff. And so knowledgeable. And
Every time I go to the dojo, uh, he always hands me a packet. Oh, read the book, read it. I just wrote it. I'm like,
another packet,
another one,
packet every day, just about the knowledge. Just
another one.
always told me to study. I feel like right now where I'm at, with all the study. As I get older, I do more things he says. um, yeah, it's just habits from him. So he definitely inspires me. My kids, man, my kids inspire me. My oldest son Julian, has, he has a sickness and immune deficiency, and it makes his life very hard. But the kid always puts his best foot forward. Straight A student, doesn't get B's, doesn't accept for B's. Very well read. Reads all the time, cleans up. He's just such a good kid. He's just an inspiration to me because he goes through all this turmoil in his life. Um, all these problems with his health, but he always manages to stay an optimist and
Mhm.
just be an amazing kid. And then my son Jojo is just a phenomenal athlete. This kid is so competitive. I guess I hope he gets it from me. He hates to lose. The other day he's at a soccer game, and he just started playing soccer this year.
Yeah,
He's never played soccer before, but
good.
there's no tournament, so we're like, all right, I guess he can play some soccer.
Yeah.
I was never allowed to do that, but we let him play some soccer. So I went to his practice, asked his coach after his game. I said, I saw he was upset. I said, how's he doing? He goes, he's amazing. Where'd he play before? I said, he's never played. I said, I don't believe you. I said, kid's just an athlete. This kid can play any sport. He's an athlete. He's walking off. He's all upset. I said, "Why are you mad?" He goes, "We lost, and they've lost their past 4 games."
Oh,
Well, man, it's a team sport, brother. You're gonna lose. He goes, "I'm not mad because we lost." I said, "Well, why are you mad then?" He goes, "I'm mad because they're all okay that we lost. Not okay with losing. Like they're accepting this too easily. Like my team is too okay with losing."
that's
And just hearing him say that, I'm like, yeah,
you don't hear a lot of kids that age
yeah,
like
yeah.
think
So
that
like,
way,
so him
say that.
saying that, definitely hits. And then my youngest son, Jacob, he's just very to himself, very quiet,
Hmm.
trains all the time. Like that, I'll get to the dojo, I start teaching, trains the entire time. He's not my most, he's youngest, so he's not as talented as his older brother yet. But just his work ethic is crazy, and he's just very to himself, and he's just so unencumbered with the result. He doesn't really bother with the result. If he goes to a tournament and loses, oh well. There's a tournament wins, oh well, back to training. Like it's always just his focus of being able to separate, the accolade with the process is it's amazing at his age. But I think, he's very good. If I say something to him, like he'll sum it up in 2 or 3 words. So I think he just thinks a little differently, and they're all just amazing. My daughter, she's baby. So
Yeah,
she gives good love. We'll just say, they all inspire me, man. They're my motivation, man. They really are, and between them and their mother, I have a very good thing going on, so
yeah,
family structure, man, that has to be your inspiration, man. My family inspires me.
yeah.
I get good support from everybody, from Marlene to Julian to Joseph to Jacob. Everyone supports each other, and we're building something amazing and breaking generational curses and building a legacy. So it's a pretty amazing experience. So, that's my inspiration. It's my family, my uncle, and my students, man. My students inspire me all the time. Um, just my students are my best teachers. I learned so much from teaching, and that's really been, I feel like this year I've improved so much, and I haven't been to a single tournament.
What music do you like to listen to?
I like everything, man. So I love, Brandon knows this is a trick question. I love salsa.
Okay.
Salsa's my stuff. Me, Brandon, and Ali Razi,
Yeah.
salsa heads.
Oh,
We're
salsa.
gonna have a salsa thon if Ali ever comes and visits us again.
That's right.
Okay.
That's
But I listen to everything, man. I really like, depends on what I'm in the mood for. If I'm training, I like listening to Kodo drums,
right. Hmm.
or shukahachi, which is the flute. I like training to that stuff because there's no words, so I can't get distracted, or I can't let like a certain type of aggression take over my training. If I'm sparring, I like listening to rap because it's just kind of aggressive, or salsa because it puts you in rhythm.
Yeah.
So that's good. If I'm driving, I like classical piano or audiobooks. I love classical piano to drive because like I like to like just think and have some introspection and reflection while driving. So I think that's real big. Um, if my kids are in a car, I'll put on some Zeppelin or some Sinatra, just something so they're cultured.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good. Do you read like a lot? And if so, like what's the last book that you read?
I read a lot, man. I read all the time. So my problem now I'm finding is I do a lot of audiobooks. Now I feel like I was doing this thing where I would read a book and then listen to the audio. But then I found as I would read the book, since I was always ahead on the audio, I'd zoom through the book and I wouldn't get as much from the book. So now I'll like choose to read certain, if there's a book I really want to like get into, I'll read it. If it's something I just kind of want to say, all right, I have a basic understanding of what the book's going on.
Hmm.
I'll listen to it. But personal development, man, got to get better every day. No, last book I read was Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, and right now I am rereading. I'm rereading The Secret. So I try to read The Secret. I don't try to read The Secret. I have read The Secret once a year, every year, because it just like involves the law of attraction. It's a very positive book overall. So I read The
I
Secret
haven't
all the
read
time.
that book yet. I haven't read it. I want to
Never
read
read
it.
The Secret. Go read The Secret. It's a good book to start with. It's a real easy read.
Definitely. And our
Yeah.
last question of the day for anyone out there, like what advice can you give to let's say to our future? Because our
Oh,
future is
so
important that's coming up in the karate world. What advice would you give to these kids now?
I would say a couple things. Uh, One is if you're old enough, some of you guys are very young. Even if you're young, it doesn't matter. You're never too young to start teaching. At my dojo, I was teaching at 12 years old.
Mhm.
Um, you have to you have to teach. Don't just practice. Practice, study, practice, teach. Studying is not enough. Practicing is not enough. Teaching is not enough. You have to do all three for
Mhm.
mastery over something. You study, practice, teach. Um, I feel like the more I teach, the better I become. I've learned more from my students than I have from training. Um, you see someone do something and you say, why is that wrong? How can that be better? Why is this transition off? And then as you're able to identify these things, hopefully you stop making these mistakes, or you see that you make a lot of these mistakes and you make the adjustments accordingly. Or you see how someone else might have to tackle something else differently because maybe something you don't struggle with, they struggle with,
Yeah.
or maybe they have a certain rhythm or way they like to approach their karate. And that gives you a different perspective overall, lets you see it from more than just a competitor's perspective. So I think studying is important. Training is important. Practicing is important, and teaching is important. But I think the quality in which you do all three is super important. See, when you study karate, you shouldn't just do. This is actually a concept from that book, How to Read a Book. That's where I came up with this from. You shouldn't just do alphabetical karate, which are the ABCs of karate. Hand on the shoulder, step down. Maybe when you start, that's how you learn down block. But you step right, ABC, step A, step B, step C. And then at some point, your growth comes into understanding your system of karate, your Shotokan, your Shitoryu, or this is the way things are done in my dojo, right? So you go from alphabetical karate and then you grow to systematical karate. But at the highest level, you have to do analytical karate, which is when you analyze what you're doing and you don't accept something as truth because it's just told to you or because it's just conformity to your style. And I think that's where a lot of people get lost. They just conform. It has to be this way because it's Shito. It has to be this way because it's Shotokan, or it has to be this way because of Bunkai, or it has to be this way because Sensei said so. But ultimately, when you put those barriers on your karate, you're really not letting what your martial arts wants to express through you resonate. There's some music that has to be brought out through you, and it can't be brought out through you if you're putting limitations on it. So I think when you're studying,
Mm-hmm.
you have to study to the point where you can do analytical karate, and you have to analyze your karate and always try to make your karate grow. So analytical karate is super important when you're studying and practicing, especially practicing. And then when you practice, it's not the amount of time you practice, it's the quality of your practice. You can train. So, and don't think, 6 hours, if I do 3 hours and you do 3 hours, they're equivalent, because they're not. I have more experience. So I can do, or you may have more experience. So maybe what I could do in 3 hours may take you 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe sometimes some people are more naturally talented, so they get away. Sometimes people are less naturally talented. There's no magic number. You have to let go of that number. That's again a limitation. You have to practice and practice quality, not quantity. Don't go for length, go for depth. If you're doing onsu and you do the first four, Brandon will tell you this, you do the first four movements for an hour. Okay, it's better than doing a whole kata for an hour. And you
Not get
can't, if you can't apply your hip in the first four punches in onsu, you're not going to apply your hip correctly throughout the rest of the kata. Just use that as a
correct.
benchmark.
Yeah.
But if you couldn't apply your hip in hand shodan, how are you going to apply your hip in onsu? It's not what you're practicing, or when you're practicing, or how often. It's the quality of what you're practicing. So you study analytically when you practice, quality of practice. And practicing, once again, doesn't just have to be practice could be teaching.
Yep.
If I teach, a lot of times what I teach, if I say this week I'm going to teach my students this, it's because that's what I'm working on. So if
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on something, if I'm working on Sanshin kata, my students are doing Sanshin kata. Why? Because through teaching them, I'm going to see certain things and understand Sanshin more, right? Well,
Yep.
what about if they don't want to do Sanshin? Well, they have to trust in you enough as an instructor to know that what you're doing the better yourself is obviously going to be beneficial to them.
Yep.
So, but it's give and take. But you have to have, teaching. When you teach too, you got to approach teaching differently. Don't teach just to you have to do it this way. I
Mm-hmm.
feel what makes me a good teacher, I feel like I'm a way better teacher than I am a practitioner.
Yeah.
And ironically, I feel most people that know me feel I'm a better teacher than I am a practitioner. I
Mm-hmm.
think Brandon will vouch for that
I'm
too.
the same way. So.
Yeah. So I think the reason being is I think if certain people do karate, some people try to fit you into a mold. Like it has
Yeah.
to be this way. I don't try to do that. I kind of let the students do what they're doing, do what they do, and watch what they're doing and make adjustments. And maybe I'll have a vision of them doing something, and they'll have their own vision, and we kind of just mesh. So there
Mm-hmm.
definitely has to be chemistry. So I have to teach differently, and sometimes some students are more challenging to teach, especially over Zoom now,
Mhm.
than others. And a big part of teaching too, just help you in life, is just acceptance. You have to accept. The hardest thing for most teachers to accept is that not every student is for them.
Yeah.
Not every student is meant to be your student. Sometimes someone's better off with someone else. Sometimes you just don't need that energy in your life.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to let someone go. Like his growth is over there, you
Yeah.
know?
Not a lot
So
of people understand that.
yeah, my sensei's taught me my whole life. Said, COVID happens. Said, Johnny, come train me. Said, no. What do you mean no? Said, man, what am I going to taught you your whole life? Go learn something else. Bring it back to the dojo when you're done. That's how he is. He's humble. He knows enough where he's not, so insecure that if I go somewhere else, I'm someone else's student, or I have to only be my student because that's my ego. He's like, no, like, bro, go grow. You ain't going nowhere, you know, or go grow. That's how your karate is gonna flourish. That's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's just as hard as seeing them quit. You could put a lot of hours in someone and they just stop out of nowhere
Yeah.
for some BS excuse, and you got to eat that. Like, all right, well, that it just wasn't for him. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So you got to just hope that. So as a teacher, I hope that if people stop doing karate with me, just some things I said to them may resonate in life. So maybe when something comes along and they want to quit, maybe they hear me saying you got to be a finisher. Maybe they develop the habit of being a finisher through me.
Mhm.
Maybe if you know they're at work and they're given a chance to take a shortcut, maybe they hear me saying greatness is small things done exceptionally well. Maybe if they're doubting themselves, or if they're mad because they've messed up, maybe they got like a DUI, or
Mhm.
they've gotten someone pregnant, or they've done something stupid and got arrested. They hear me telling them, pick yourself up, do it again. You're built from something. Setbacks are just a setup for a comeback.
That's right.
You never know when those one or two things you whisper in someone's ear, man, just pop back in their head. So
Mhm.
that's what I hope as a teacher, at least. So it's different, man.
Yeah.
It's got to be cut differently.
Exactly.
Brandon, there's a saying. How long does it take the average person to get a black belt? The average person doesn't get a black belt; they quit.
Uh, that
Right?
that is true.
You take that even a step forward, further. How long does the average person do martial arts for? The average person doesn't do martial arts. So just because you do martial arts, you have to look at yourself like you're cut differently.
Yeah.
And if that helps you when you're a martial artist, maybe that gives you, that little push you need. For me, just being a martial artist, and embracing karate, and letting karate guide me throughout my journey, and set me up for success has definitely been the key factor in making me the person I am today. And I'm
Mhm.
not even done yet. I feel like I'm just almost where I want to be.
Mhm.
And I'm sure when I get to where I want to be, I'll realize, hey, it wasn't what I thought it was, and I'm still not done yet. So I think I'll be done when I'm dead. So here we go.
Now, do you have Instagram and like Facebook or?
I do have Instagram. I have three. Well, I have two Instagrams. I have Joey Castro Elite Training, which is where I post my karate stuff, and like kids I work with privately in my private training group, which
Mhm.
is a different type of I guess business venture I do.
Mhm.
Um, and then I have Wankan Karate, or JK Karate and Fitness, which is my dojo's page, which I manage as well too.
Sure.
Then I have so
So
yeah.
if you want to follow Joey Castro, there you have it. Yes, and there you have it right there, Joey Castro, brother. I appreciate you coming on and doing the series for me, man. So everyone, if you guys want to get in contact with Joey Castro, boom, I'll put the his Instagram and all his information in the details below. So
Sounds good, brother.
everyone, thank you for tuning in to get to know me, and we'll talk to you later.
Right. See you guys. Bye.